The stars burned cold and merciless against the endless stretch of void, casting their pale, indifferent light over the battered warship Indomitable as she knifed through the darkness. Her hull, once gleaming with the polished steel of fresh commissions, now bore the scars of countless campaigns. Jagged rents sealed by emergency welds, blackened craters where plasma blasts had tried and failed to end her journey. Within her armored frame, the air trembled with the hum of straining. Reactors and the distant echoes of orders shouted, boots pounding, lives moving at the ragged edge of survival. Indomitable had been built for wars humanity was never meant to survive. But humanity had a tendency to make a mockery of predictions. The bridge was a cauldron of tension. Captain Elias Ward stood at its heart, a lone figure of grim certainty amidst the swirling chaos. Around him, the bridge crew worked with a desperate efficiency, their fingers flying across consoles, faces pale but determined under the harsh pulse of emergency lighting. Before them, displayed in brutal clarity across the main viewport, was the nightmare they had raced toward, the Vorvani fleet. Hundreds of Predator warships filled the blackness, their jagged forms designed for terror as much as destruction. Alien glyphs, twisted and cruel, scarred their armored hides. Entire worlds had fallen before them without resistance, civilizations reduced to smoldering ruins and scattered bones. The Vorvani did not conquer for power. They hunted for sport, for the primal joy of it. They were the monsters the younger races told ghost stories about, and now they had turned their gaze on humanity. "Incoming transmission, Captain," barked Lieutenant Maris from comms, her voice brittle against the overwhelming silence that gripped the bridge. Ward didn't flinch. "Put it through." A figure materialized in the space above the central dais, an immense insectoid creature clad in living armor, its multifaceted eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. Its voice oozed contempt, a guttural snarl that vibrated through the ship's bones. "Surrender your vessel. You are unworthy prey. Accept annihilation. It is the only mercy your kind will receive." Ward's lips twitched, not into a smile, but something darker, colder. He leaned forward slightly, his words deliberate, heavy with hidden promise. "You think you've seen everything, that there's no prey beyond your reach. But there are things in this galaxy you cannot imagine, and horrors you will not survive." The Vorvani's mandibles clicked in amusement, the transmission cutting without another word. Arrogant, predictable. The fleet began to move with chilling precision, formations tightening, weapons systems warming to lethal brightness. They would close in, entrap Indomitable, and tear her apart in a feast of violence. It was how they always operated, overwhelming, inevitable. They saw the humans as nothing more than an interesting new flavor of victim. But this time, they had miscalculated. Beneath the decks of Indomitable, beyond the blast doors and armored plating, in a part of the ship not even mapped in official schematics, something ancient and terrible stirred. Not a weapon in the traditional sense. Not another missile or plasma lance or kinetic barrage. No. This was something older than war itself. Something born of desperation, brilliance, and madness combined. Humanity's unseen weapon. Their final, desperate gambit. Before we jump into this epic tale, subscribe to HFY Chronicles for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors, and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight. Imagine, standing there on that trembling bridge, feeling the breath of death on your neck, the certainty that the predators would tear you apart, and knowing, deep in your bones, that salvation didn't lie in fighting harder or faster or longer. It lay in unleashing something no sane mind would ever use lightly, something that could not be undone. Captain Ward turned to his weapons officer. "Status of Revenant, Lieutenant Sato," an unassuming man whose hands trembled slightly when idle but turned deadly precise when duty called, nodded without hesitation. "Locked, primed, awaiting your command." There were rumors about Project Revenant even among the high command. Whispers that it was not a weapon humanity had built, but one they had found, or worse, become. A fusion of human ingenuity and something darker, some predatory instinct honed beyond reason. There were no schematics, no blueprints, only orders. Deploy Revenant when all else failed. No other option. Ward hesitated only for a fraction of a second. The weight of centuries of survival, of all the blood humanity had spilled just to still exist, bore down on him. Then he nodded. Release it. In the heart of Indomitable, massive containment locks disengaged with seismic groans. A section of the ship that no engineer had dared open in decades bloomed like a black flower, and from it emerged the Revenant, a creature of living metal and synthetic flesh, a shifting tapestry of nanofiber and adaptive alloys. It did not walk. It flowed, tendrils curling through the air, seeking out the path to freedom. It was beautiful and monstrous, a work of art designed to terrify as much as destroy. The Vorvani fleet, sensing movement but unable to identify it, hesitated for the briefest moment. Their sensors, sophisticated beyond anything known, screamed warnings in meaningless static. No energy surge, no identifiable weapon, just something. An anomaly that did not belong. And then it began. Across the Vorvani fleet, systems flickered and died. Weapons misfired. Hull integrity wavered. But it wasn't a virus or a hack. It was something far more intimate. Their minds. Their own minds turned against them. The Revenant didn't destroy ships. It hollowed out the will to fight. Officers on the Predator bridges saw visions of their own deaths, their victories twisted into defeats, their trusted comrades becoming snarling enemies. Commands issued were reversed. Orders to attack became commands to retreat. Fire control systems aimed at their own engines. On the Indomitable's bridge, the crew watched in horrified fascination as chaos bloomed among the stars. Vorvani cruisers collided with each other in blind panic. Frigates broke formation, trying to flee from phantoms only they could see. A great battleship, the pride of their fleet, fired its main cannons into its own escorts, vaporizing them in a storm of blue plasma. Ward stood in the center of it all, silent. His crew dared not speak. They had unleashed something that was not just a weapon, but a force of nature. The Revenant whispered into the cracks of the enemy's confidence and turned them into gaping chasms of terror. For the first time since the Vorvani had risen from the swamps of their birthworld, they understood fear. Not battlefield fear, not strategic hesitation. True, soul-deep terror. The kind of fear that roots itself in the mind and festers forever. The kind that makes you realize, in one terrible instant, that you are not the hunter. You are the hunted, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. As the Revenant spread through their fleet like a living nightmare, Captain Ward finally turned away from the viewport. His voice was a low growl, meant only for himself. This is what happens when you mistake survival for weakness. The battle had not even truly begun, and already the predators were breaking. But humanity had only just started hunting. The stars glittered overhead like the shards of shattered glass, each one a distant witness to the chaos unfurling beneath them. On the Indomitable, the tension had shifted. The eerie stillness that had consumed the bridge was shattered, replaced by the frantic rhythm of a warship moving at the breaking point. The once mighty Vorvani fleet, an unstoppable juggernaut of destruction, was now reeling, disoriented, splintering apart in every direction as the Revenant spread its insidious influence. The Revenant was not a weapon designed to kill. It was a weapon designed to obliterate the mind. It did not crush ships or shred armies. It crushed souls, severing the will to fight, to survive. Humanity had faced annihilation countless times before, but the one thing that had always set them apart was their ability to endure, to adapt, to evolve. Now they had weaponized that resilience, and the Vorvani were the first to understand what it truly meant. Ward stood still, his eyes narrowed in grim satisfaction as the system alerts flashed in rapid succession. The fleet was in total disarray. Sensor readings came in erratically, almost incoherent. Ships that had once commanded the battlefield, capable of annihilating entire planets, were now reduced to whimpering wrecks, disabled by their own internal panic. The once unstoppable predators of the galaxy were crumbling under the weight of their fear. "Report!" Ward barked, his voice cutting through the chaos, sharpening the crew's focus like a blade. His heart raced, not with panic, but with something far more dangerous. Anticipation. The Revenant was doing its work, but there was no turning back now. The darkness they had unleashed would not rest until it had broken everything. "Captain," Lieutenant Maris said, her voice tight with disbelief. "The Vorvani flagship, the Predators, Heart, it's lost all power. We've got incoming data from their systems. It's like they've all gone mad. Their fleet's breaking apart." Ward's jaw clenched. "They'll regroup. They always do. We don't have long before they figure out how to counter it." And counter it they would. Ward knew the Vorvani well. Their intellects were cold, calculating, and their obsession with hunting made them a dangerous species to underestimate. No matter how powerful the Revenant was, no matter how effective, it was in disassembling their confidence. The Vorvani would eventually adapt. They had to. The only question was, how long would it take before they learned to fight back? The bridge hummed with an energy that was both electric and suffocating. The walls seemed to pulse with the weight of this moment, this fragile, temporary victory that felt so fleeting. Humanity's enemies were never far behind. There was always a price to be paid for survival. "Lieutenant Sato," Ward called, his voice steady. "Status of our offensive capability?" Sato's hands were a blur on the console, eyes flicking back and forth across the screen. The young officer had seen things most soldiers would never dream of. Deadly ground battles, space engagements that ripped through entire fleets. But nothing had prepared him for the gut-wrenching weight of what was happening now. "Weapons are online, Captain. But I know what you recommend, Lieutenant," Ward interrupted, his voice clipped. "We're not retreating. Not now. We finish this." There was no fear in Ward's tone. There was no hesitation. He had spent his life preparing for this moment, the moment when humanity would show its true potential. It wasn't just about winning. It was about showing the universe, showing the Vorvani, that humanity was not to be trifled with. They were not prey. They were not weak. They were survival incarnate. Sato hesitated, but only for a moment. "Understood, sir." The Revenant had begun to penetrate deeper into the Vorvani fleet. It was a symbiotic force, capable of adapting to the internal psychological structure of each individual, manipulating their perceptions of reality. A Vorvani captain, for instance, would suddenly see images of his own crew turning on him, of his ship falling apart from within, of his entire race being eradicated by an invisible enemy. The Revenant could manipulate these fears, twisting them until they became a self-fulfilling prophecy. "Incoming transmission," Maris called, her fingers flying across the console with desperate urgency. A new face appeared in the holographic feed. A Vorvani officer, his mandibles trembling in barely contained fury. His voice was low, guttural, and laced with venom. "You will regret this. You have unleashed something beyond your understanding, human. The Vorvani will not kneel to your petty fears. We will tear your kind from the stars and watch you burn." Ward's lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. "You should have learned when to stop hunting," he said quietly. "But you didn't. Now you're about to learn what it means to be prey." The transmission cut, and Ward turned back to his crew. "Prepare the Revenant for the final phase. Let's finish this." Beneath the Indomitable, deep within the bowels of the warship, a second phase of the Revenant began to unfold. The weapon was not just a psychological force. It was an agent of pure entropy. When it had first been conceived, scientists had been hesitant to use it. It had been designed as a last resort, a failsafe in case humanity faced its extinction. The Revenant tapped into the most primal parts of the mind, fear, paranoia, self-doubt, and used them to unravel not just the will to fight, but the very fabric of reality itself. And now, as the Revenant's influence spread, entire systems within the Vorvani ships began to fall apart, engines failing, communications silenced, weapons going offline. Not through any direct assault, but through the chaotic unraveling of their internal order. The Vorvani were being consumed from within, their own fears made manifest in ways they could not combat. But it wasn't enough. Ward had known from the beginning that this wouldn't be a simple victory. The Vorvani would recover. They would learn to adapt. The Revenant was powerful, yes, but the Vorvani were nothing if not relentless. If humanity was to win this battle, they would need more than just fear. The call to action rang out across the Indomitable. "Deploy the quantum disruptors," Ward ordered. Now, a series of synchronized alarms blared, shaking the ship's very bones as the quantum disruptors, an experimental weapon of incredible power, came online. These weapons didn't simply disable or destroy. They erased matter on a quantum level, breaking down the bonds that held the fabric of reality together. The Vorvani ships, already on the brink of collapse, were about to face something far worse than terror: annihilation. In the final moments, Ward stared out at the swirling chaos of the battlefield, the Revenant still weaving its dark magic through the enemy fleet. For a fleeting instant, he allowed himself a small measure of satisfaction. Humanity had played its final card, and the galaxy would never forget the price they would pay for underestimating the human spirit. But Ward knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. There would be more battles, more predators would come, and when they did, humanity would be ready. The Indomitable quaked as the quantum disruptors fired, a deep rumble that reverberated through the very core of the warship. Ward felt the ship's metal groan beneath him, but he did not flinch. The ship was alive, alive with purpose. Every inch of it was a testament to humanity's ingenuity, a machine that had been crafted not only to destroy but to survive. And now, as the quantum disruptors unleashed their devastating energy, Ward understood that humanity was not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to make a statement, a declaration to the galaxy that no force, no matter how ruthless, could ever break them. The quantum disruptors worked with terrifying precision, sending out pulses that reverberated through the fabric of space itself. The first Vorvani ships caught in the blast turned to nothing but debris, their atoms disintegrating in a flash of energy. It was not a conventional weapon. It was a fundamental alteration of the universe's most basic rules. Matter broke down, time twisted, and entire star systems felt the pull of their own collapse. It was as if the universe itself had been reconfigured, and the Vorvani, once titans of space, were nothing more than dust in its wake. But even as the destroyer fleet crumbled, Ward knew that this was only the beginning of the war. The Indomitable had unleashed its might, but the Vorvani were not so easily defeated. Their intelligence and adaptability had always been their greatest assets, and Ward had been waiting for the other shoe to drop. This was their moment to regroup, to recalibrate, and to strike back. The Revenant had shaken their confidence, yes, but it had also forced them into a corner. And there was nothing more dangerous than a species backed into a corner. On the bridge, Lieutenant Maris spoke in a voice tinged with urgency. "Captain, we've received another transmission from the Vorvani flagship. They're threatening a countermeasure, a weapon of their own. It's unlike anything we've encountered before." Ward's mind raced. He had anticipated this. They had pushed the Vorvani too far. Now they were going to see what true desperation could create. "Put it on screen." The image flickered to life, and once again, the face of the Vorvani commander appeared. His mandibles twitched, and his eyes, no longer gleaming with arrogance, were now full of a cold, calculating fury. "You believe you have won, human, but you are mistaken. We have awakened something far worse than fear. You will face the harrowing, a weapon forged in the depths of our darkest laboratories. It is not just a weapon of war. It is a force of nature." The transmission ended abruptly, cutting off before Ward could respond. For a brief moment, the silence that followed felt like a vacuum, like the entire ship held its breath, waiting for the inevitable. But Ward wasn't surprised. The Vorvani had spoken of the harrowing before. It was their ultimate weapon, a weapon designed to reshape the battlefield at a molecular level, a weapon capable of manipulating the very laws of physics. It could tear apart the fabric of time itself, erase entire fleets before they had the chance to fire a single shot. He turned to his crew, his expression hardening. "Prepare for anything. Activate the countermeasures. We don't know what we're up against." The Indomitable's engines hummed with life as the crew scrambled to carry out his orders. Ward's thoughts turned inward as the ship's systems began to recalibrate, the ship responding to the threat as if it were a living organism, each component working together in perfect harmony. Humanity had always been resourceful, and Ward knew they had one thing the Vorvani didn't: the ability to think beyond the immediate threat, to adapt and innovate on the fly. "Captain," Lieutenant Sato called out, his voice tense. "We've detected a massive energy surge on the Vorvani flagship. It's expanding at an exponential rate. I've never seen anything like this before. It's as though their entire ship is being turned into a weapon." Ward's mind spun as he tried to process the implications. The harrowing was more than just a weapon. It was an existential threat, a force capable of unraveling everything. "Divert all available energy to shields," he ordered. "Brace for impact." The Indomitable's hull vibrated with an almost imperceptible tremor as the Vorvani flagship unleashed its weapon. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a ripple in the fabric of space, a distortion in the gravity well that surrounded the ship. But then the ripples became waves, and those waves spread outward, like the shock wave of an explosion that never ends. The ship shuddered violently, as if caught in the grip of an unseen force, and Ward could feel the pressure building inside his skull. For a moment, it felt as though reality itself was warping. Time stretched and compressed, pulling them into a moment that was both timeless and crushingly fast. The stars outside the windows twisted and spun in ways that made no sense. The ship's gravity wells fluctuated erratically, and the very air around them seemed to ripple. "Shields are failing," Maris shouted, her voice edged with panic. "We can't hold this much longer, Captain." Ward's fingers clenched into fists. They had never faced anything like this before. The harrowing was unlike anything in their arsenal of knowledge. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a force of nature, bending the rules of physics, manipulating the very foundation of reality. He had always known that one day, humanity would face something that defied all logic and reason. It seemed that day had come, but there was no time for fear. Ward's mind raced through the possibilities. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would do so again. Humanity had always found a way to win, even when the universe itself seemed stacked against them. And now, faced with a weapon that threatened to tear apart everything they had fought for, Ward knew that the time had come to use humanity's greatest weapon, their ability to think beyond the expected. "Activate the Revenant," Ward said, his voice low and resolute. "It's time we show the Vorvani what true terror feels like." The crew looked at each other in stunned silence. The Revenant had been their trump card, a weapon so dangerous that its mere deployment had once seemed unthinkable. But now, as the Indomitable continued to tremble under the relentless pressure of the harrowing, Ward knew there was no other choice. "Lieutenant Sato," he said firmly, "do it." Sato nodded, his hands steady on the console as he initiated the sequence. The Indomitable's systems hummed to life once again, and Ward felt a surge of energy pulse through the ship, the Revenant awakening from its dormant state. It was a weapon built from humanity's darkest thoughts, their fears, their anger, and it was ready to unleash its full power. The battle for survival had just entered its final phase. The air on the bridge of the Indomitable grew thick with tension, the silence broken only by the hum of the ship's systems and the low tremors that continued to shake their surroundings. Every soul aboard could feel it, the finality of what was about to unfold. As the Revenant powered up, its presence was palpable, like a living creature awakening from a long slumber. The crew moved with purpose, their faces etched with the knowledge that they were on the cusp of a desperate gamble. Humanity's last card was in play, and there would be no turning back. Ward stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The Vorvani flagship loomed ahead, its massive form trembling under the force of the harrowing, a weapon that defied all logic and threatened to rip apart the fabric of space itself. The stars around them twisted in unnatural spirals, as if the very laws of physics had been bent to the Vorvani's will. But now, with the Revenant coming online, Ward knew they had a chance, a sliver of a chance, to turn the tide. "Captain," Lieutenant Sato's voice crackled through the comms, breaking Ward's concentration. "Revenant's systems are online. We're ready to deploy." Ward took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling over him. The Revenant was no ordinary weapon. It was an advanced AI-driven warship capable of surpassing even the most sophisticated alien technologies. Built from the very core of human ingenuity, the Revenant's design was inspired by everything humanity had learned in their desperate battles against the Vorvani and other galactic threats. It had been constructed as a fail-safe, a contingency plan for the worst-case scenario. And now, It was the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. "Launch it," Ward said, his voice resolute. The Indomitable's hangar doors opened, with a thunderous roar as the Revenant's sleek, angular form shot out into the void. Unlike the Indomitable, which was a symbol of human might and endurance, the Revenant was a shadow, a harbinger of death. Its design was minimalist, its form a perfect blend of practicality and lethal efficiency. No markings, no insignia, just the cold, calculating presence of a weapon built for one purpose: destruction. Outside the ship, the Revenant quickly distanced itself from the Indomitable, its engines glowing with an eerie, almost unnatural intensity. The view screen flickered for a moment, showing the Revenant as a dot against the massive backdrop of the Vorvani flagship. The Revenant was small, but its power was immeasurable. Its engines burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns, the very air around it distorting with the force of its acceleration. The warship had been designed to be invisible to all known sensors, its presence only detectable by its sheer force on the fabric of space. Ward's pulse quickened as the Revenant closed in on the Vorvani flagship, its trajectory precise. The Vorvani had no idea what was coming. They were so focused on the Indomitable, on their perfect weapon, their harrowing, that they had underestimated humanity's ability to innovate, to adapt, to surprise. And that was their mistake. Humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to think beyond the limits of what was possible. The Revenant activated its primary weapon, the Singularity Cannon. Unlike any weapon in existence, the Singularity Cannon manipulated the very laws of physics to create a miniature black hole, a rift in space that would swallow everything in its path. No shields, no armor, no technology could withstand its pull. In an instant, the cannon unleashed its fury, a streak of energy that lanced through the vastness of space, striking the Vorvani flagship with the force of a collapsing star. For a moment, everything was still. Then came the explosion. The view screen was filled with blinding light as the energy from the Singularity Cannon collided with the flagship. The stars around the Vorvani ship twisted into an unrecognizable spiral as a ripple of energy expanded. Outward, the shockwave hit the Indomitable and sent it reeling, the ship groaning under the force of the blast. Ward's hands gripped the railing, but he didn't flinch. This was it, the pivotal moment, the turning of the tide. Through the blinding flash, the view screen began to clear, and what they saw left them breathless. The Vorvani flagship was no more. It had been reduced to a swirling mass of debris, a black hole of destruction that consumed everything in its path. The once proud vessel, the heart of the Vorvani's might, had been erased. Its power, its technology, its crew, all devoured by the Singularity's hunger. But even as the crew of the Indomitable breathed a collective sigh of relief, Ward's mind remained focused. This victory, though monumental, was not the end. The Vorvani had been dealt a devastating blow, but there were still more of them, scattered across the galaxy. More who would come, more who would fight, more who would retaliate. "Damage report," Ward commanded, his voice calm but unwavering. "Lieutenant," Maris was quick to respond. "Minimal damage, Captain. We've taken some hits, but nothing we can't repair. The Indomitable is still operational." "Good," Ward said, though his mind raced with the weight of their situation. "Prepare to engage any remaining Vorvani ships. We need to finish this while we can." It was then that Sato's voice cut through the tension once more. "Captain, we've got a new reading. It's coming from the outer rim, far beyond our sensor range. It's massive." Ward's brow furrowed. "What is it?" "An entire fleet," Sato replied, his voice thick with disbelief. "And it's heading straight for us." Ward's heart sank. The Vorvani may have lost their flagship, but their resolve was not so easily broken. The real war was just beginning. And this time, humanity would not be able to rely on a weapon like the Revenant to save them. They would have to face the true might of the Vorvani fleet, a fleet that would stop at nothing to avenge their defeat. Tessot, bridge of the Indomitable, felt like a pressure cooker. The hum of the ship's engines and the constant flicker of tactical displays were drowned out by the weight of what lay ahead. Ward's gaze remained fixed on the view screen, now displaying the distant but unmistakable sight of the incoming Vorvani fleet. It was vast, an armada of ships, some resembling organic behemoths, others more mechanical in design, but all powered by the same singular drive: vengeance. They were coming for blood, and they weren't stopping until humanity was wiped from existence. "Captain, the fleet's trajectory is locked," Sato reported, his voice tight with the strain of their impending fate. "They'll be in weapons range in 15 minutes. Ward's hands clenched at his sides, but his mind remained razor-sharp. They had no time to waste. The Revenant, humanity's final ace, was a one-time-use weapon. Its systems had been overloaded by the deployment of the Singularity Cannon. For a brief moment, Ward thought about the path that led them here, how humanity had clawed their way back from the edge of annihilation, only to be faced with an even more insidious threat. The Vorvani had thought they had won, but humanity's spirit had proved them wrong. Now, though, it was a matter of survival. "Helm," Ward barked. "Set a course for the nearest asteroid field. We can use the debris for cover. It's the only way we stand a chance." Lieutenant Maris hesitated. "Captain, the debris fields are dense. Our sensors will be compromised and we don't have a choice," Ward cut him off. "Do it. Now." The Indomitable veered hard to starboard, its engines groaning under the strain as the ship swung toward the asteroid field. Ward's grip tightened on the console as they shot into the dense cluster of asteroids. Outside, massive rocks, some the size of cities, loomed like ancient silent giants. The Indomitable's hulls scraped the edges of several smaller asteroids as they slid between larger masses, evading detection. For a moment, it felt like they were a part of the cosmos itself, lost in the great expanse of space, at one with the void. But the calm was fleeting. The Vorvani would be on them in moments. "Enemy ships are approaching," Sato reported again, his voice filled with an edge of panic. "They've adjusted their trajectory to match ours." Ward didn't flinch. "Keep evasive maneuvers. Don't let them lock onto us." The view screen flickered, and for a heartbeat, Ward thought he saw the unmistakable shape of a Vorvani ship materialize from the asteroid dust. It was larger than any of the others, a towering titan of obsidian metal and pulsating energy conduits. The Ablation, the flagship of the Vorvani commander, Zerak. If there was one ship they could not afford to lose to, it was that one. The Ablation was armed with the most powerful weapons the Vorvani had ever conceived. Advanced disruptor cannons capable of tearing apart entire fleets in seconds. It was the heart of the coming assault, and it was bearing down on them with terrifying speed. "All hands to battle stations," Ward ordered, his voice a deep growl. The ship's alarms blared, red lights flashing as the crew scrambled into action. The Indomitable's guns powered up, their energy surging as they prepared for the fight of their lives. Outside, the black void of space grew lit with flashes of bright energy as the Vorvani fleet opened fire. The Indomitable bucked under the force of the initial barrage, its shields flaring as they absorbed the energy. But the Vorvani's assault was relentless. Searing beams of plasma erupted from the Ablation's weapons, their sheer force shaking the ship to its core. Ward's heart pounded in his chest as his fingers danced across the command panel, giving orders with an instinctive precision born from years of battle. The Indomitable was taking hits, but it wasn't going down without a fight. "Captain, the asteroid field is too dense for targeting," Maris shouted over the roar of the weapon's fire. "We're going to have to break free or we'll be torn apart." Ward's eyes narrowed. The Vorvani knew their tactics, and they knew the Indomitable's capabilities all too well. If they stayed here, hidden amongst the debris, it would be a matter of time before the Vorvani cornered them. The odds were stacked against them. And yet, there was one more card to play. A final move that would either shatter their enemies or ensure humanity's death. "Bring us around," Ward commanded. "We need to get a clear shot at the Ablation. Prepare to launch everything we have." The Indomitable's engines flared as it broke free of the asteroid field. The Vorvani fleet, now aware of their position, immediately shifted to engage. Ward's hands flew across the controls, issuing commands as the ship's weapon systems primed for their last desperate strike. "All guns, fire at will." A barrage of fire erupted from the Indomitable's ports, the energy pulses tearing through space with a fury only humanity could muster. The first wave of shots struck the Ablation, cracking its massive hull. But Ward knew this was only the beginning. The ablation's shields were still up, protecting it from most of their attack. The Indomitable's weapons were powerful, but it was not enough to bring down the Vorvany flagship. But then, something unexpected happened. A tremor shook the Indomitable, deeper than anything before. Ward's eyes went wide as he looked to the side of the bridge, where a new blip appeared on the radar. It was faint at first, a tiny signature on the edge of the battlefield. But then it grew, and then it exploded onto the radar like a sunburst. Another ship, one humanity's enemies never expected. It was the Revenant. Its sleek form emerged from the shadows, its engines glowing a deadly green as it sliced through the void with terrifying precision. The Revenant's appearance wasn't just a surprise, it was a statement. It was humanity's last weapon, the embodiment of their resolve and defiance, and now it was on a direct course for the ablation. No one knew what it was capable of, but they all knew one thing. The Vorvany had no idea what was coming. "Unleash the payload," Ward whispered to himself, his heart racing. "Give them hell." The Revenant's singularity cannon came online once more. The universe held its breath.